Washington, I'm Bret Baier. We begin tonight with a tale of two surveys as Republicans ride the bumpy, insult-filled road to the South Carolina primary Saturday. Ted Cruz is now leading Donald Trump in one major national poll. In another, Trump is increasing his lead. In South Carolina, the undecideds are still high as the gloves come off. We lead off tonight with Chief Political Correspondent Carl Cameron in Chapin, South Carolina. Carl?
Hiya, Bret. Marco Rubio is about to be endorsed by South Carolina's Governor Nikki Haley. Rubio has been in a really tough battle with Ted Cruz for second place here in the Palmetto State. And Cruz has been battling and for the first time is now leading Trump in a national poll. And boy, is their battle vicious. Ted Cruz today summoned the media for a news conference to taunt Donald Trump.
The bullying is not going to work here.
Cruz is daring the frontrunner to make good on his threat to sue. At issue, a Cruz ad that uses Trump's own words against him.
I'm very pro-choice.
But you would not ban it?
No.
Or ban partial birth abortion?
No, I would. I am pro-choice in every respect.
Trump's attorney sent a cease and desist order to the Cruz campaign yesterday. Cruz is responding in kind.
Even in the annals of frivolous lawsuits, this takes the cake. So, Donald, I would encourage you, if you want to file a lawsuit challenging this ad, claiming it is defamation, file the lawsuit.
Trump in a statement said, quote, "If I want to bring a lawsuit, it would be legitimate. Likewise, if I want to bring the lawsuit regarding Senator Cruz being a natural-born Canadian, I will do so. Time will tell, Teddy." Cruz is calling Trump's bluff, relishing the chance to depose him under oath.
I'll point out it didn't work out very well for Bill Clinton. Donald Trump does not want to be under oath answering questions about his own record.
The latest South Carolina polls show Trump with a commanding lead, and Cruz and Rubio locked in a virtual tie for second. John Kasich and Jeb Bush are running out of time in the first Southern primary.
He's an actor playing a candidate, in effect. He doesn't believe what he says. There's nothing in his past that would suggest he's a conservative, and now he's morphed into this person that is kind of shifting with the winds.
Nationally, polls say the race is more volatile than ever. Trump has his biggest lead yet in a new Quinnipiac poll. And in a Wall Street Journal NBC News poll, Cruz has taken over the lead with 28% over Trump's 26%. Marco Rubio's at 17%, John Kasich at 11%, Carson 10%, and Jeb Bush 4%. Rubio's aggressively attacking Cruz in hopes of overtaking him.
I've been saying for a while now that Ted, unfortunately, has proven that he's willing to say or do anything to get elected.
Whenever anyone points to their actual record, the response of both Donald Trump and Marco Rubio is to yell the word liar.
They really, they lie. And the reason I can say that nicely is that Rubio called him a liar also.
And I want to earn good hands.
And Haley's endorsement of Marco Rubio is a big get tonight. It comes 3 days before the first in the South primary. And all the polls suggest that at least a third of the Republican electorate here may still change their minds. Bret?
Carl Cameron in South Carolina. Carl, thank you. By the way, the new Fox News poll comes out in South Carolina tomorrow morning. You want to tune in for that. The Quinnipiac poll reinforces the notion that Bernie Sanders has virtually erased Hillary Clinton's huge national lead. Chief White House correspondent Ed Henry looks at the numbers and what they mean from Las Vegas.
For the second straight time, the Quinnipiac poll shows Hillary Clinton is now in a dead heat nationally with Bernie Sanders.
You are nobody's firewall.
Sanders had a huge rally last night of nearly 5,000 people at Morehouse, the historically black college in Atlanta, where Nina Turner, a former Ohio State senator who's flipped from Clinton to Sanders, declared to fellow African Americans,
"We built this country. The sweat and the tears of black folks built this country, and we ain't nobody's firewall. That you gotta earn our vote. You don't own our vote."
According to a new CNN ORC poll, Clinton still has a big double-digit lead in South Carolina, where Democrats vote February 27th, though she first has to get through Nevada this Saturday. And the same poll shows a dead heat here, with Clinton only leading Sanders by 1 point. With the race tightening, Clinton spokesman Brian Fallon last week tried to downplay expectations in Nevada by saying, quote, "It's still a state that is 80% white voters." That angered Nevada's senior senator, the Democratic leader Harry Reid, who secured the state's first first in the West caucus by touting that the Hispanic vote brings more diversity than other early states. Are you disappointed that the Clinton campaign in recent days is saying this is not a diverse state and that it resembles Iowa, they say?
Of course, the Clinton campaign didn't say this. One person said Brian Fallon.
He's the spokesman.
Of course, he changed real quickly after I called him, okay?
Clinton does have Virginia Senator Tim Kaine, who speaks fluent Spanish, working Hispanic neighborhoods here, trying to make her case.
It is head and shoulders, night and day different in terms of Hillary being the most qualified person to be a fantastic next president of this country.
Yet the campaign continues to have to clean up after former President Bill Clinton, who yesterday falsely claimed in South Carolina, quote, the people that perpetrated that travesty in San Bernardino had never been to the Middle East. They were converted over the social media. In fact, one of the terrorists was born in Pakistan and spent most of her life in Saudi Arabia, while the other made several trips there. Meanwhile, Harry Reid told us he's not planning to endorse anyone ahead of Saturday's big caucus. And just a few moments ago, we learned the AFL-CIO says they will not endorse Clinton or Sanders. Those are two major establishment endorsements Clinton wanted to have. It shows key parts of very senior parts of the Democratic Party not sold yet, Bret.
Ed Henry live in Las Vegas. Ed, thank you. So who do you think will win Saturday's Democratic caucuses in Nevada? Let me know at facebook.com/Bret Baier SR. We're on Twitter at Bret Baier. You can use the hashtag special report. Privacy or national security? That is the question tonight for one of the world's biggest and most profitable corporations as it deals with federal agents in the wake of a deadly terror attack. Senior correspondent Adam Housley has the details from Los Angeles.
A showdown between Apple and the feds has gone public. Apple CEO Tim Cook says he will fight a court order to help unlock one of the San Bernardino terrorists' phones, saying, quote, while we believe the FBI's intentions are good, it would be wrong for the government to force us to build a backdoor into our products. Ultimately, we fear that this demand would undermine the very freedoms and liberty our government is meant to protect. Found in the front seat of a Lexus used by Saeed Farouk, the phone in question is key to the investigation.
We still have one of those killer's phones that we have not been able to open. Right? It's been over 2 months now. We're still working on it.
The FBI has been unable to unlock the iPhone 5C, and a federal judge has ordered Apple to provide reasonable technical assistance to help crack it. At issue, disabling a security feature that erases data from the iPhone after too many attempts to unlock it. Agents tell Fox without this, they are unable to, quote, connect the dots. They believe will likely lead to people who helped Farouk and his wife, Tashfeen Malik, carry out the December terror attack in San Bernardino that killed 14 and wounded 22 others.
They need access, and frankly, Apple is stopping that access, and they're going to have the blood of dead Americans on their hands. It's wrong. We're at war. We need this information. Who are they to say that we can't get it?
The White House says this is a one-time request, something Apple says is just not possible.
They are not asking Apple to redesign its product or to create a new backdoor to one of their products. They're simply asking for something that would have an impact on this one device.
Now, the Verizon iPhone was given to Farouk by the county of San Bernardino as part of his job. Agents say the phone company can only provide basic information and not enough to help the ongoing terror investigation. Apple has 5 business days to formally respond to the ruling, and the DOJ has given us a statement late tonight, Bret, that says in part that the judge's order and our request in this case do not require Apple to redesign its product, to disable encryption, or to open content on the phone. In addition, the judge's order and our request were narrowly tailored to this particular phone. Bret?
Adam Housley in Los Angeles. Adam, thank you. More on this with the panel. The presidential candidates are talking about the Apple case. Here's what some of them are saying.
We have a history in this country of working collaboratively with the private sector, and as president, I will seek to do that, to figure out a solution to this problem of encryption that protects Americans' privacy, but still allows us access to valuable information that could prevent future attacks.
I don't think it's an example of government overreach to say that, we had terrorists here on our soil, and we've got to understand more detail about who they may have been communicating. All get encrypted. If one group or access, does another group get a backdoor access?
I agree 100% with the courts. We should, in that case, we should open it up. Here are the people that killed 14 people, other people laying desperately ill in the hospital from what they did. These are two people radicalized who were given a wedding party by the people that they killed. There's something going on. We have to be very careful. We have to be very vigilant. But to think that Apple won't allow us to get into her cell phone, who do they think they are?
President Obama says boosting cybersecurity will require long-term vigilance and overhauling systems currently in place. Correspondent Rich Edson is at the White House tonight to tell us what the president's doing about it. Good evening, Rich.
Good evening, Bret. And the Obama administration's answer to a vulnerable cybersecurity network, an additional $5 billion of spending next year on security, and the creation of a new commission, the Commission on Enhancing National Cybersecurity. Just this afternoon, President Obama has named his former national security advisor, Tom Donilon, to chair that commission. The president has named former IBM chief executive Sam Palmisano as his vice chair. The White House says the commission will devise recommendations for the federal government to implement over the next decade to enhance its cybersecurity. In doing so, the president acknowledges success will require an overhaul of much of the current security system.
We are not as well organized as we need to be to make sure that we're dealing with all these threats in an effective way. We've made some enormous progress since I came into office, chipping away at the problem, trying to upgrade certain systems, trying to patch over certain security vulnerabilities.
The White House says the commission will present its findings to the president by the end of this year. In just the past year, hackers have stolen 22 million government personnel files, infiltrated the Department of State, and accessed other government files. A recent Government Accountability Office report says the Department of Homeland Security's cyber protection system partially, not fully, meets its objectives. And one cybersecurity expert tells Fox that one of the problems with this commission might be that the next president may not listen to its recommendations. Bret?
Rich Edson, live on the North Lawn. Rich, thank you. Up next, a terror attack in Turkey, not far from the U.S. Embassy. We'll show you. First, here's what some of our Fox affiliates around the country are covering tonight. Fox 28 in Columbus, as a committee in the Ohio House approves a bill to ensure public school students who want to express their religious viewpoints get the same access to school facilities as secular students. The measure also removes a provision that allows the school district to limit the exercise of religion to lunch period or other non-instructional times. Fox 2 in Detroit, where customs officials have seized almost $5 million in counterfeit U.S. currency from a Vietnamese couple. The two arrived in Detroit on a flight from South Korea. They say they were going to use the money as burnt offerings to the deceased, a common practice in certain Asian cultures. And this is a live look at Chicago from Fox 32. The big story there tonight, protests by parents in support of Chicago public school teachers. Their union was promoting the so-called walk-ins just days after the district slashed $85 million from its $1.1 billion budget. That's tonight's live look outside the Beltway from Special Report. We'll be right back. A terrorist car bomb killed 28 people and wounded dozens more today in the Turkish capital of Ankara. It was targeting members of Turkey's military. Correspondent John Huddy has the story from our Middle East newsroom.
Chaos in Ankara after a car bomb explodes at a busy intersection during rush hour in Turkey's capital city. Turkish officials say the target was a military convoy. Several vehicles were reportedly hit as they waited at a traffic light. U.S. State Department officials say the explosion was about a half-mile from the U.S. Embassy, where a duck and cover order was issued.
The embassy is working to determine if any U.S. citizens were involved, and we stand by to provide any and all consular assistance. The U.S. Embassy also issued an emergency warning message to U.S. citizens urging them to avoid the area and to monitor local news.
Turkey's President Recep Erdogan said his country will fight those who carried out the attack and the, quote, forces behind them. No one has claimed responsibility yet, but Kurdish rebels and Islamic militants have launched deadly attacks in Ankara and other parts of Turkey before. Turkey's military continues to battle Kurdish rebels in the southeastern part of the country and also in Syria, along with ISIS militants. Washington, though, is urging Turkey to hold hold its fire on Kurdish forces in order to allow a pause in Syria's civil war to take effect.
We've expressed our views, made it clear that just as the YPG, as I said, its actions are very counterproductive, but we've also told or conveyed to the Turkish government that it should cease its artillery fire across the border.
And so far, at least 28 people were killed, 61 injured, and Turkish officials say that those numbers could certainly continue to rise as we've seen in the past. Bret, back to you.
John Huddy in our Middle East newsroom. John, thank you. The U.S. is flexing one of its strongest military muscles over the Korean Peninsula. 4 F-22 Raptors flew into an air base near Seoul as a show of force to North Korean leader Kim Jong-un. Kim has defied the U.S. and the West by launching a long-range rocket and conducting an underground nuclear test within the last several weeks. President Obama's top diplomat is expressing official concern over the story we broke last night about China's deployment of anti-aircraft weapons on a disputed South China Sea island. National security correspondent Jennifer Griffin is watching developments tonight from the Pentagon.
A war of words between the U.S. and China after satellite images reveal China secretly placed anti-aircraft missile batteries on a contested island in the South China Sea.
It's a serious concern.
Secretary of State John Kerry vowed to raise the issue with Chinese leaders in the coming days.
There is every evidence every day that there has been an increase militarization of one kind or another.
The Chinese foreign minister brazenly pushed back.
This is consistent with the right for self-preservation and self-protection China is entitled to under the international law. So there should be no question about that.
As first reported yesterday by Fox News, these satellite images show Woody Island's beaches empty on February 3rd. But days later, on the eve of President Obama's summit in Palm Springs with 10 of China's neighbors, China sent these HQ-9 missiles, which can shoot down military and civilian aircraft from 125 miles away. News of the Chinese missiles elicited this reaction from the campaign trail.
The Chinese have got to knock this off. This idea of expansion or flexing their muscle is a big mistake on their part. We don't need to make them enemies, but they've got to stop this.
In the past 18 months, China has constructed 3,000 acres of artificial islands atop reefs in the South China Sea. 5 years ago, it planted the Chinese flag on the ocean floor. Late last month, Kerry visited Beijing, and his Chinese counterpart pledged not to militarize the islands, also claimed by Vietnam and Taiwan. Secretary Kerry said at the time the U.S. would not take sides in territorial disputes with China's neighbors. In September, the Chinese president spoke in the Rose Garden of China's intentions in the South China Sea.
China does not intend to pursue militarization.
Today, the head of the U.S. Pacific Command, Admiral Harry Harris in Tokyo, questioned the Chinese president's sincerity when he promised U.S. leaders not to militarize the islands. Bret?
Jennifer Griffin at the Pentagon. Jennifer, thank you. The State Department says it is confident that Russia carried out airstrikes that hit several hospitals and schools this week in northern Syria. Russia has denied it.
There were Russian aircraft that carried it out. These strikes, the Russians have provided or supply the Syrian Air Force, but we're pretty confident in our assessment that this was Russia that carried out these strikes.
Also today, Turkey's president is criticizing the U.S. and President Obama for not supporting calls for a no-fly zone in Syria. As we head to break, a live look now along the U.S.-Mexico border as Pope Francis holds Mass there. We will go there live for a report on his trip. Take a listen now as we head to break of that Mass. It adds that other callers also do not always receive immediate assistance. A VA spokeswoman says the agency is working to upgrade the hotline. Stocks have had their biggest three-day gain since August of last year. The Dow was up 257 today. The S&P 500 finished ahead 31. The Nasdaq gained 98. Right now, Pope Francis is about to begin one of the most significant ceremonies of his papacy. As you look live there, he's holding Mass in Juarez, Mexico, within sight of the U.S. border, at a time of great controversy over immigration and the violence that has engulfed the region. The service is being shown on giant screens just across the border at a football stadium in El Paso, Texas. That's where correspondent Casey Stiegel is tonight. Hi, Casey.
Bret, good evening. The crowd here very excited as the Pope makes his way up to the altar. We're moments away from Mass beginning in Juarez. Let's show you the live pictures now coming to us. 220,000 people have gathered at that spot, which is not including the 80,000 volunteers who formed a human chain in the streets as the pontiff made his way to that location. This is just on the other side of the Texas border with the giant border fence not far from where he will be standing. The service being broadcast, as you said, on the Jumbotron here at the Sun Bowl Stadium in El Paso to nearly 50,000 faithful. Pope Francis has been traveling around Mexico for the last 5 days, and throughout his journey, the Holy Father has condemned the Mexican drug trade and the violence associated with it. But his message today has been focused on the fair treatment of migrants. The bishop of the El Paso Diocese told me, what you're seeing, this excitement, he calls the Pope Francis effect, a pope who has been credited with re-energizing the Catholic faith and bringing
this language as a native, understanding their culture from the inside. Being an American in the broadest sense of that term certainly brings a whole new level of connection with the leader of the Catholic Church.
Now, U.S. Customs and Border Protection officials say that the international border crossings absolutely jammed earlier today because an estimated 200,000 pilgrims went over to Mexico for this celebration. You can imagine security in this region extremely. Dozen state, local, and federal law enforcement agencies at work throughout this area, making sure the public is kept safe. Bret?
Casey, thank you. The words baseball fans have waited all winter to hear. Pitchers and catchers report are being spoken tonight. A handful of major league clubs opened their spring training gates today. The rest will soon follow. But the players are not the only people trying out for their jobs. Correspondent Steve Harrigan is in Miami with that story. Hello, Steve.
Bret, pitchers and catchers from the Pittsburgh Pirates arrive in Florida this week, but the team is also auditioning singers.
Good morning, everyone.
They lined up early
Did it? Yep, that's it.
for a chance to sing.
Oh, say, you see by the dawn's early light,
The old
through the perilous fight,
and the young.
the ramparts we watched were so gallantly.
Why are you doing this?
Because I'm proud of being American and I really wanted to sing it.
And the rockets red glare.
A difficult song to master.
I'd sing karaoke at the bowling alley, and I hope I develop my voice good enough to sing the anthem well.
For some contestants, the song has a special meaning. Like Korean War veteran Barry Yoder.
It's not a performance, it's a tribute to the flag.
Oh, the land of the free.
A tribute that echoes forth from an empty ballpark.
And the home of
The Pirates will pick just 10 people to sing before spring training games next month. Bret?
Play ball. Steve, thanks. A national leader on the Republican side, or is the Trump momentum still growing and the Clinton lead evaporates in latest polling? We'll talk about it all with the panel when we come back.
For the first time in many months, there's a new national frontrunner on the So the sound you're hearing is the sound of screams coming from Washington, D.C.
Every day is a great day in South Carolina. Ladies and gentlemen, if we elect Marco Rubio, every day will be a great day in America.
They come out with a voter violation form, which is a fraud as far as I'm concerned. And what he did with that whole thing was a disgrace. So we're not going to let that stuff happen anymore. I mean, we're not going to let it. We will not let it happen. We're all watching. You're all watching. Keep your eyes wide open.
Some of the sights and sounds from South Carolina today. The poll that Ted Cruz was referring to is the new NBC Wall Street Journal poll, a national poll in which Cruz is up 2 points within the margin of error there over Donald Trump. And there you see the rest of the poll. Again, it is one poll, but here's the head-to-head matchup. Donald Trump versus Ted Cruz head-to-head. If they were just going at it, one against the other, Ted Cruz with a 16-point lead. And against Marco Rubio, it is also a 16-point lead for Marco Rubio. Again, one poll. Take a look at the national poll out of Quinnipiac today, and that has Donald Trump at 39%, Marco Rubio in second. So, where are we in this race? Let's bring in our panel. Steve Hayes, senior writer for the Weekly Standard. A.B. Stoddard, associate editor of The Hill, and syndicated columnist Charles Krauthammer. Steve, it's important to point out that this is one poll. We don't know whether this is a trend until we see more numbers.
Right. Just a small difference between those two national polls. I mean, it's, you know, you got one that has Cruz +2, you have others that have Trump +20, +18. I think you identified the key question. Is the new NBC Wall Street Journal poll an outlier, or is it the beginning of a trend? And I don't think we have enough data to know. We'll certainly have a better idea when we see what happens in South Carolina on Saturday. We'll see what happens in Nevada on Tuesday.
By the way, we have new numbers, Fox News numbers out of South Carolina tomorrow morning, 10 a.m. on FNC.
Right. I mean, the national polls, I still believe the national polls tell us something. They tell us the direction that things are trending. For a long time, Donald Trump has had a commanding lead in national polls. It has been steadily shrinking, and if Ted Cruz has overtaken him, that tells us that there are developments in the race that we ought to be attuned to. The more important polls, of course, are the state-by-state polls, particularly the polls in the upcoming states, South Carolina, Nevada, and then the March 1st states. And in South Carolina, by all accounts, in the public polling, Donald Trump maintains a commanding lead. I mean, sometimes a 20-point lead. If you talk to people who have been doing private polling, both associated with campaigns and with some of the super PACs, the belief is that Trump's lead is not quite as commanding as the public polls suggest, that Ted Cruz is closer to Donald Trump than the public polling suggests, and that Marco Rubio has momentum. In a way, the polling in South Carolina feels a bit like the polling in Iowa, going into Iowa.
We should point out we'll have our own national poll tomorrow night at 6, South Carolina in the morning. AB, the battle between Donald Trump and Ted Cruz is pretty intense in South Carolina. Today, Cruz gathered the media, defended an ad they have against Trump, played some of the ad, and then went over a lawsuit that's been threatened against Ted Cruz. Take a listen.
Life, marriage, religious liberty, the Second Amendment. We're just one Supreme Court justice away from losing them all. We cannot trust Donald Trump with these serious decisions.
You know, I have to say to Mr. Trump, you have been threatening frivolous lawsuits for your entire adult life. Even in the annals of frivolous lawsuits, this takes the cake. So, Donald, I would encourage you, if you want to file a lawsuit challenging this ad, claiming it is defamation, file the lawsuit.
And this was the letter from Trump's lawyer that Cruz was responding to. Ted Cruz has already had one of his ads pulled off the air concerning Senator Rubio because it was totally false. Additionally, he was forced to apologize to Dr. Ben Carson for fraudulently stealing his votes in Iowa and was embarrassed by his phony voter violation form. He is a liar, and these ads and statements made by Cruz are clearly desperate moves by a guy who is tanking in the polls, watching his campaign go up in flames. Finally explains Cruz's logo. If I want to bring a lawsuit, it would be legitimate. Likewise, if I want to bring the lawsuit regarding Senator Cruz being a natural-born Canadian, I will do so. Time will tell, Teddy.
I don't really have enough time, Bret, to go through how many things he's said that aren't true, starting with the fact that President Bush, you know, led us into war intentionally, knowing he was lying about intelligence and all the other stuff. Also, he apparently predicted that the Iraq war would be a mistake, but no one can find him ever predicting it until we were a year into the war and things going south. Ted Cruz never apologized for stealing votes from Ben Carson. Ben Carson outperformed the polling in Iowa that came out 2 nights before the votes. He came in 4th. He did very well. Ted Cruz apologized for not saying something to his staff earlier that night and having his staff deal with a tweet or whatever about breaking news on CNN. He has never said, I apologize to Ben Carson for stealing his votes in Iowa. So the thing is about his presser today, which was impressive, is Ted Cruz obviously is well-versed in the law. He's argued before the Supreme Court, and when he gets going, no one is going to stop him, and everyone's going to believe everything he's saying. But also, the grounds for this, obviously, is a legal joke, even if you are not the scholar that Ted Cruz is. Ted Cruz, just like Steve said, they have the same anxieties as they did going into Iowa. Rubio could be surging. Ted Cruz is worried Rubio might come close to him. Trump is worried Ted Cruz could eclipse him and come in first. And so it's really the same feeling and the same fights going on, only Trump has brought it to a new level.
And the whole narrative of they want the fighter, the voters want the fighter this year. Is this legal effort, this lawsuit threatening, is that the fighter that people you think want?
I'm not sure it helps him in that respect. I think it looks rather petulant. Also, conservatives or ordinary people don't like when rich, powerful people threaten lawsuits here and there. I thought the strongest element of what Cruz has said is that he's done this all his life in business as well, because it's a use of your power and your money and your influence, because ordinary folks can't afford a defense and often have to cave in. It's a kind of it's a bullying using the law.
Well, let me just say, one legal group has Donald Trump named in 169 lawsuits, federal lawsuits.
So that plays into that narrative. But look, we were talking about the polls, how disparate they are. But the one thing that they agree on is that if you take Trump against the field wins. And that's why I thought the numbers you just showed of a hypothetical one-on-one of a Cruz against a Trump, Rubio against Trump, with a 16-point lead, that tells you what we have been saying, which is so obvious for the last 6 months, that the problem in this race is not necessarily that there is a wholesale majority revolt of Trumpites against the Washington establishment. What there is a significant plurality, but the reason he's way ahead and it looks like a wholesale revolt is because the anti-Trump vote is so split. And if it consolidates, it would beat him. The problem is it has not consolidated, and if the vote remains split, it may never consolidate and Trump will win the nomination.
There was one town hall soundbite from Jeb Bush today where he looked frustrated. He said, what am I supposed to give up and just pack it in?
Yeah, he sounded frustrated in that audio, and that town hall came right after Marco Rubio had won the endorsement of Nikki Haley. Jeb Bush had wanted that endorsement, had said in an interview yesterday that he thought it would be a very important endorsement, and then it went to Marco Rubio. I think the most important thing going into South Carolina to remember is that in 2012, 55% of South Carolinians decided in the last few days. If there is a surge as there was in Iowa, it would seem to benefit Marco Rubio. If there's a surge as there was in New Hampshire, it would benefit a John Kasich or maybe a Donald Trump.
Next up, privacy or national security, a major dilemma for Apple with far-reaching implications.
San Bernardino, very important investigation to us. We still have one of those killer's phones that we have not been able to open. Right? It's been over 2 months now. We're still working on it.
This iPhone that was owned by the San Bernardino Department of Public Health, but was used by one of the terrorists, that they should have access to that phone, and that Apple should disable the auto erase security feature on the phone. That's the case that they've made to the court, and the court issued their ruling, say that they issued a ruling indicating its agreement.
Showdown between Apple and the federal government. This about one of the phones obtained from the San Bernardino terrorists. Tim Cook with Apple writing, we oppose this order, which has implications far beyond the legal case at hand. Continuing, the FBI may use different words to describe this tool, but make no mistake, building a version of iOS that bypasses security in this way would undeniably create a backdoor. And while the government may argue that its use would be limited to this case, there is no way to guarantee such control. So far, Apple is a no. We're back with the panel. Charles.
Well, I'll give you a way to make it limited to this case. It's the obvious answer and solution, and the grandstanding that Apple is doing, I think, is deplorable. What you do is you go to Apple and say, look, you take this, you take this one phone, you open it wherever you want in some secret lab underwater off the Pacific Isles. All we want is the information. If you like, you can incinerate the phone after all this is done. Give us the information. This isn't as if the FBI stumbles upon the address book of a killer who could be a serial killer. It's got a lock on it. Apple has the key and says, we're not going to give it to you because you are asking that we give away our secrets. It is preposterous. And, you know, I do think in my more cynical moments, which is almost always these days, that, I mean, this, in fact, is a great advertisement for the security of Apple. The world now knows that for 2 months, the most sophisticated investigative agency of the United States has been unable to get into a private iPhone. That's quite an advertisement. You win, Mr. Cook, give it up. And if he wants to sue me over that, go ahead and do it.
I would try 1, 2, 3, 4. I mean, sometimes I don't know. DOJ put out a statement. It is unfortunate that Apple continues to refuse to assist the department in obtaining access to the phone of one of the terrorists involved in a major terror attack on U.S. soil. The judge's order and our request in this case do not require Apple to redesign its products, to disable encryption, or to open content on the phone. In addition, the judge's order and our request were narrowly tailored to this particular phone. AB.
This is just, it's so outrageous. Beyond the heinous crime, this person is dead, and the phone belonged to the county. This is not anything that the founders could have anticipated. There has to be a framework for this. I know they've done some case-by-case work with the government, but there needs to be a public debate about this. The Congress needs to force some kind of framework so that there are rules for the future. And as Charles said, it does not require building a new system that can be easily hacked by everybody else.
All right, I know where you are on the national security thing, but play Judge Napolitano right now. What is the libertarian argument to say no to this?
Yeah, look, I think there actually is an argument here, and the argument is, should the federal government be able to compel Apple to create a new product, in effect, which is the argument that Tim Cook is making. If Tim Cook were right about the substance of the argument, I think he would have a pretty good case. I think he's wrong about the substance of the argument. And the court order, as Charles suggests, does specify that this software device will be coded by Apple with a unique identifier to this phone, loading only and executing on this subject device. So it is specific. It's narrowly tailored. I think that's the argument they're going to make. And to AB's point, it is currently, according to the Communications Assistant Law Enforcement Act, which was passed in the 1990s, it is currently a violation of federal law to build a telephone system that isn't accessible to law enforcement for wiretaps. Now, there's a privacy argument to be made there, but the people who are making it now, the question is whether that applies to data companies. Do you treat data companies the same way you treat telecom companies?
Charles? If the feds were asking Apple to create a mechanism where any cell phone could be hacked into, that there would be a backdoor, then that would be a real argument, and it would require, I think it would have to be rejected. It would have to be only case by case. But that is not what's happening in this case, and that's why the grandstanding that I think Apple is doing is really harmful, and I don't see a way in which they can prevail in this kind of argument.
Up next, we see how you scored with our Contenders app this week.
Dealer.
It is time to check out this week's results from the new special report Contenders app. Have you seen it? Well, we've added up the results from the Fox News app. The statement about immigration that was most agreed with was in 1986. Ronald Reagan basically said the people who were here, if they were law-abiding, could stay. But what didn't happen is we didn't build the walls effectively, and we didn't control the border. We need to. We need to control our border just like people have to control who goes in and out of their house. That statement belongs to Ohio Governor John Kasich. Here's how all the candidates did. The scale is 1 to 100, with 1 meaning complete disagreement, 100 total agreement. Users also ranked the immigration topic as an important issue, ranking it on average 4 out of 5 stars as far as issues go. Our panelists, a couple of you took the quiz. Steve, what'd you end up with?
I got Governor Kasich's, which I think summarizes the problem quite well. You have to send a message about controlling the border and actually controlling the border if you're going to even contemplate legalizing or doing anything with the 11-12
we cover this campaign so often. You see these statements, and then sometimes you actually, hey, wait, I heard that.
I did, and I know it was Rubio, but it happened to be a position I took 10 years ago, which is if you close the border, then there'll be a national consensus for some kind of humane legalization, and that's essentially what Rubio is saying.
All right, panel, thank you. Thanks for inviting us into your home tonight. That is it for this special report. Fair, balanced, and unafraid. No online show tonight. Greta goes on the record right now with a couple of special guests. We head to South Carolina. We'll be live there on Friday.